Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 313. The Ancient Deities. Audrey was about to apply for a private exchange when she suddenly discovered one thing. The world, who was seated at the other end of the long bronze table, didn't show any interest in the acting method at all. He didn't even have the urge to ask about it. Does he already know about the acting method? Or did he consult Mr. Fool privately? Audrey mumbled to herself, still cautiously asking for a private meeting. Then, looking at Furs, she said in a measured voice, in both her choice of words and pronunciation, "Our attitude towards potions isn't about grasping them, but rather it's about digesting them. The key to digestion is to act, and the key to acting is the corresponding potion name." "Why?" blurted Furs. After a moment of deliberation, she added another question. "Then, how should one act?" Audrey recalled Mr. Fool's pose and examples, repeating the description of the castle, the guards, the invitation, the disguise, and finally saying, "In short, the goal of acting is to reconcile the body, heart, and soul, bypassing the stubborn resistance of the remnant headstrong psyche of the potion so as to assimilate and digest it." As a fiction writer, Furs had a strong imagination. After justice was done with her description, she had already sketched out the corresponding scenes in her mind, and she had basically understood what justice was trying to convey. "Is that so? So this is how you eliminate the remnant psyche influence in the potion and reduce the risk of losing control." "The more I think about it, the more I feel that this is possible." The bewilderment in her mind gradually lessened, and the feeling of surprise slowly filled her heart. Finally, she asked for confirmation. "Was this taught by Mr. Fool?" "Yes, if not for Mr. Fool, we might have already lost control. Our continued existence is proof of the acting method's effectiveness." Justice praised from the bottom of her heart. "Phew!" Furs exhaled and felt her future brighten with hope. Could this be the fortuitous encounters described in all kinds of novels? This feels so good. However, I shouldn't be careless. Mr. Fool might be a malicious, evil god with deep secrets. Furs reminded herself. Immediately, she began to think about an even more important question: how to act as an apprentice. Just from the word alone, apprentice means that one's skills are not mature enough in various aspects. Does this mean that one should still accept guidance and focus on studying? One shouldn't flaunt one's superiority and be arrogant, and one has to understand the insignificance of their own strength. Furs quickly let her thoughts wander and didn't realize that the environment for individual communication had been discontinued. At that moment, the son, Derek, looked around silently, gritted his teeth and said, "I want to know which 7 gods you are talking about, and the general situation regarding them." He couldn't help but ask this question that had been plaguing his mind for a long time. "I know that." Audrey almost failed to react at first, but she quickly figured out what the son was asking and raised her right hand slightly. At the same time, the hanged man in the world also indicated that they could answer. "What are they doing?" Furs looked on blankly, trying to remember what had just happened. After a moment, she remembered the son's question. She then began ruminating over the implied meaning behind his words. "It can't be? He actually doesn't know about the 7 gods? Where did he come from?" Furs looked at Mr. Sun, who was just a teenager. In the northern continent, other than insensible children, there wasn't anyone who didn't know of the 7 orthodox deities. Even the poor who struggled to survive and the tramps were no exception. To them, the occasional free food offered by the cathedrals was so tempting that the workhouse was a flame of despair. People from the southern continent's colonies? However, there's no need for him to ask such a simple question. Just find a cathedral and ask a pastor or a priest to preach a sermon, and you'll be able to figure out the relevant content. Where does the son actually live? What a freak! Furs looked from side to side while mumbling to herself, but Miss Justice, Mr. Hangman, and Mr. World weren't surprised. At that moment, the Foggermers Klein saw that there were 3 people eager to answer. He smiled and said, "Mr. Sun, who do you want to trade with? What are you willing to pay?" The son Derek pursed his lips and thought for a few seconds. "I'll trade with each of them individually." Only then can I obtain the most comprehensive information. In the harsh environment of the City of Silver, Derek had matured quite a bit from his previous patrols and clearance operations. He paused for a moment before requesting, "The reward is that you can ask me a question, the kind that I can answer." "I agree. I'm very interested in the City of Silver." Audrey smiled faintly without any hesitation. "City of Silver? Where is this place? Why haven't I heard of it?" Furs looked around blankly, feeling completely at a loss as to what they were talking about. Audrey glanced at her and kindly explained, "Mr. Sun is either in the northern or southern continent, nor is he on an island in the ocean. The City of Silver is located outside of our understanding, or you can say he is beyond the limits of our exploratory efforts." "Are you kidding me?" Furs subconsciously had this thought. However, with that thought, based on the Sun's performance, and the fact that it was impossible that the others were ganging up to cheat her, Furs quickly accepted Audrey's explanation. "This secret gathering is even more incredible than I thought. Mr. Fool is more powerful than I thought." Furs exhaled silently and sighed with emotion. Audrey vaguely read her thoughts, and for a moment she was tempted to flaunt about how the deaths of Vice Admiral Kalangos, Intis Ambassador Bakerland, and the swindler, Lenevis, was a result of the Tarot Club. What a pity! If Furs were to learn of these three things, she would immediately associate Audrey with justice. "I have to keep it a secret. Audrey, even if it's hard on you, you have to keep this a secret." Audrey suddenly took a deep breath. Since she didn't know much about the City of Silver, she didn't know what to ask. Furs didn't participate in the following transaction and chose to spectate from the sidelines. As for the hangman and the world, they successively agreed to the Sun's request. The happiest of all was Klein, for this meant that he reaped thrice the rewards. During individual communications, the Fool could hear the conversation. Klein obviously didn't have any plans of insulating himself. "Son, you sure are simple." He laughed in his heart. As there was a lot of information about the seven gods, justice, the hangman, and the world could only write what they thought was important. After a while, they each passed on their descriptions to the Sun. Derek quickly scanned through the information, and his eyes stopped on a few lines. "In addition to the Lord who created everything, the oldest gods are the eternal blazing sun, the Lord of storms, the God of knowledge and wisdom." Those churches were the oldest churches. Why haven't I heard of any of these? I've never heard of any of these gods. I feel like there's something very important hidden here. Derek knew that each Tarot Club gathering had a time limit, so he hastily ended his review, intending to go back and pray to Mr. Fool for help in awakening his memories. Then, the first one to raise a question was Justice. Due to the serial murder, she was interested in the devil sequence, so she imitated Mr. World and asked the appropriate questions. Derek answered with verve and added something. "In the corresponding sequence 7, a Beyonder of the Abyss pathway can effectively interfere with divination and spirit channeling. A devil's powers sure are terrifying. I wonder if my sequence 7 psychiatrist will result in a qualitative change. Or would I need to be sequence 6? Audrey felt a little apprehensive from what she heard. The second question came from the hangman. He seemed to have considered this question for a long time. Looking at the Sun, he opened his mouth and said in a deep voice, "I want to know the creation myth of the City of Silver." The slightly tense Derek relaxed a little and said, "The omnipotent and omniscient God created everything and entered a state of deep slumber. The giant king, Ormer, the dragon of imagination, Ankwelt, the elf king, Siniathrim, the vampire ancestor, Lilith, the devil monarch, Farbody, the phoenix ancestor, Gregrace, the mutant king, Kvastor, and the king of demonic wolves, Phlegria split the remnant powers of authority, becoming lords of the sky, land, and ocean. They ruled over reality, the spirit world, and the astral world. They were deities who ruled over various races and were truly deities, the ancient gods." Phlegria? Klein, who was listening, suddenly noticed a familiar word. Whenever he advanced, or when his condition was unstable, or when he came into contact with the remnant influence of the Antigonus family's diary, he would always hear some illusory, incomprehensible raving coming from somewhere. Hornaces! Phlegria! Hornaces! Phlegria! Hornaces! Phlegria! Klein had known for a long time that Hornaces was referring to the mountain range where the ruins of the nation of the Evernight was, but he had never known what the word Phlegria meant. And now, for the first time, he heard Phlegria coming out of someone else's mouth. King of demonic wolves, an ancient deity. But why was he involved with the Hornaces mountain range? Klein maintained his unperturbed position as he quietly listened to Derek's recount. Some of them perished in the battle among themselves, while others were stripped of their authority after the awakening of the Lord that created everything, the omnipotent and omniscient God. The first part is the creation myth, and the second part is about the City of Silver's true history. Alger wanted to know more, but as the son was unwilling to say more, he could only stop in time and turn his attention to thinking. The king of demonic wolves, Phlegria, had left the stage of history in the second epoch, in the dark epoch long before the cataclysm? As he pondered, Klein manipulated the world to ask a question. What he had wanted to ask was which sequence allowed a Beyonder to freely switch between the body and the spirit, just as Miss Sharon did. If the son wasn't aware of the answer, he could consider something else. But now, he had something more important to know about, so he hoarsely said, "Everything about the king of demonic wolves, Phlegria." The son, Derek, looked at Mr. World in astonishment and frowned. "I don't know much about this ancient deity. He's also known as the Annihilation Demonic Wolf, and the Evernight Demonic Wolf." Evernight Demonic Wolf. Evernight? Klein slightly narrowed his eyes.